Blue Mage was added back in Stormblood in 4.5 as Eorzea's first ever so-called limited job. A special class kept outside the bounds of the usual job structure with many unique systems and many strict limitations. While the job has seen updates over the many years since its addition, it's far from given the attention that it deserves. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. I'm Kurojakku. With Beastmaster on the horizon and Blue Mage not receiving its usual update per expansion for the first time since its release, it seems to me like a good time to take a close look at what Blue Mage is, what limited jobs can be, and how Squeenix has managed to drop the ball time and again when it comes to this particular form of content. Now, before we get to the elephant tamer in the room, if Beastmaster has no elephants then this joke doesn't make any sense, but shut up, it's my video, let's get a few things out of the way. First of all, limited jobs are not standard jobs nor part of the greater sandbox of Final Fantasy XIV. You would think the term limited job would make that quite obvious, yet somehow there are still folks out there who seem to get confused why limits have to be placed. Blue Mage is not really a job, it's more like a game mode that happens to be attached to a job stone. Blue Mage, and very likely Beastmaster as well, though exact details are uncertain, cannot queue for roulettes, cannot be used in your typical Savage or Extreme clear unless with a party of fellow Blue Mages, cannot participate in ultimates, and is also level capped 10 levels below the current expansion. Usually. They just broke that rule this year, like I said, so at least until after Evercold, we will actually be 20 levels shy of the cap. Thanks, Yoshi P. Blue Mage can be unlocked in Limsa Lominsa after completing a Realm Reborn, and has its own small quest chain that requires you to reach a certain level and, more importantly, obtain a certain spell to proceed. You see, therein lies Blue's gimmick. As you search around fighting everything that moves, you'll begin to collect certain monster attacks and adding them to your Blue Mage log. All you gotta do is witness the skill in action, survive the encounter, and kill the creature in question. That way you have a shot at learning said skill. These can then be equipped into a loadout of 20 other Blue Mage spells and placed on your bar like normal, thus making Blue Mage the closest thing that we have in this game to some sort of custom class system. The actual usefulness of these spells can range anywhere from slapping someone with a fish to one-shotting a crowd of frozen enemies regardless of level, and just about everything you can think of in between or even far beyond. Hence the need to restrict Blue from most forms of content. That's not to say there's nothing for a Blue Mage to do. Besides leveling and filling out your spell log, there's also the Mass Carnival, a series of small puzzle-like encounters meant to test your wits and your spell collection and is the true heart of the Blue Mage experience. Along with that, there are also some Blue Mage-only achievements. We will come back to those later. They also have an advantage over any other job when it comes to open-world content, such as fates and hunt marks and the like, since there's nothing stopping you on an overpowered Blue Mage from joining in. Well, almost. That level cap does mean they can't partake in the latest expansion, and honestly, that's fair enough. All that aside, some say that Blue Mage and the soon-to-be Beastmaster are a complete waste of resources. Meaningless dev time poured into a gimmick job with no function in the endgame whatsoever. You know, those hardcore raider folk we all love so much. I say it hasn't been given nearly enough attention. That's not to say that they need to spend an immense amount of dev time on this, mind you. In fact, I even have a few tricks up my very blue sleeves here. First is the continuation of those Blue Mage achievements I mentioned earlier. These were a series of challenges to clear old extremes with item level sync and a full party of only Blue Mages. You see, they seem to have stopped doing these after the Stormblood level 70 patch for Blue. Why they suddenly stopped it? Nobody knows for certain, but my best guess has to do with a spell called Aetheric Mimicry. This is a spell that allows Blue Mage to copy the role of another player, adjusting your stats and changing you from its default DPS role to either tank or support. Actually, you also do get buffs to DPS as well. This even allows for extra effects on certain other spells based on your mimicry role. Slight problem, it does not actually change your role on a technical level. Sure, statistically you have more HP like a tank and damage reduction. Sure, you can use an enmity spell to draw aggro, but you're not a blue. Well, you are a blue, but you're not that kind of blue. And then my friend Blue is neither a blue nor a blue unless she plays blue or blue, but is also always a blue. This joke has now run its course, let's move on. The reason this is very important comes down to the amount of role-determined mechanics in later Extremes and Savage content. Just look at most Dawntrail fights. There's almost always at least one phase where mechanics target players based on their specific role. When it comes to Blue Mage, everyone is technically a DPS, and so those types of mechanics tend to break down and become a random mess. The solution is simple. Clearly there's something in the programming of each job that gives them a role label of some sort. We do know this is the case because we have things like that stat boost that you get per unique role in a party. And if you toggle on role colors like I do, even player names change to match the job which they are playing, so all that needs to be done is rework Aetheric Mimicry. Make it a 3-way toggle that lets you change between DPS, tank, and support specs outside of combat. No target needed, by the way. Then internally create 2 secret Blue Mage jobs which you are actually fully switching between when you press the skill. They of course would level together, the same way Scholar and Summoner do, only you would not see the tank or support spec listed anywhere in your class list. Just cast the spell and suddenly your job icon, nameplate, and internal role tag are now green. Cast once more and you're now the bluest blue whoever blew. Stop giggling, this is a serious topic, grow up. This would solve the entire core issue and would also open up some new ideas, but more on that in just a bit. With those limits lifted, pun intended, it'd now be possible to continue the Achievo list into later expansions. Ideally, every expansion would have a series of achievements for each extreme, a capstone for completing all the extremes, each Savage fight individually, and a capstone for the entire raid series as a whole, all of which would require them to be done with an item level sync enabled. To go along with this, we need some half-decent rewards for once. So for example, each of the capstone extreme achievements could have an alternate colored variant of the final extreme mount. A blue sparkly Kirin for Realm Reborn, a blue Firebird for Heavensward, a Soulfire Kitsune for Stormblood, and so on and so forth. This wouldn't devalue the original trial mount collections, and also wouldn't take all that much work to implement what is effectively just a palette swap. This would then give Blue Mage its own special endgame while simultaneously giving a path to experience old fights at a synced level, albeit in a slightly altered way. Evergreen content that doesn't age is always a big plus. Just look at Ultimates, for example. And no, real quick, I don't think we need Blue Mages in Ultimates, just figured I'd make that bit clear. A few other quick ideas. Blue Mage Roulette added to Duty Finder, perhaps lock behind a job quest or Mass Carnival progress to force you to have a somewhat functional kit. The rework Mimicry I mentioned can even match you based on your current role to get the proper amount of each. This roulette would only include duties that possess Blue Mage spells and only queue you up with other Blue Mages, all at item level sync. On top of the usual daily tomestones, you can also pick up the occasional dungeon or trial spell that you happen to be missing to fill out that log at a more casual pace. Remember, when you clear an instance at a synced level, any spells that would have been unlocked have a 100% success rate. Anything done here would count to your blue log as well, and on that topic, the blue log should be a duty finder for Blue Mages. If you want to play Farosari's Hard for that Mimicry spell, you should be able to queue as a blue and get a party filled from others hunting that spell or who are in the roulette playlist. Now for a bit of a wild idea. Blue Mage duels in the carnival? Sure, it does seem unbalanced and silly and whimsical and probably stupid, but it'd be fun to have the option. Of course, there's also those changes to overland content hinted at in the recent keynote, and those may be relevant to Blue indirectly. But that's enough talk about the Blue Mages. Let's turn our attentions to the shiny new toy, Beastmaster. Boy, do I have some big problems with Beastmaster. Now, I don't hate it. I think the concept looks fun in theory, even if it's just a legally distinct Blue Mage. What I do hate, however, is the nonsensical decision to limit cap Beast Hunter at 50. I am well aware it has its own breed of side content with that roguelite looking thing, but that's going to lose its charm after a week because you already know the rewards are going to be a single minion in a pocket full of materia, so what even is there left to do outside of its very specific content? I don't need it to copy Blue Mage step by step and have the same trial achievements. In fact, I don't think it's very fitting for Beastmaster to begin with. But that hard cap at 50 is going to destroy this job before it even has a chance. This means you're limited, ha ha ha, to base game Realm Reborn zones, no Allagan creatures from Az's Law, no hot as fuck Sin Eaters from the first, no silly Ultima Thule creatures in Endwalker. Imagine getting to tame a Moon Tendy. Too damn bad. You must wait till 12.0 for that because the Yoshi P decided level 50, that's where it's stopping. The very appeal of such a job is hamstrung by being restricted to just a handful of the game's least memorable locations. There's potential for solo content here as well. Using Beastmaster to farm glamour in later dungeons with a well-planned pack of creatures could be a fun idea. Slight problem, ain't nobody interested in farming fucking Sastasha or Tamtara Deepcroft for glamour, I'll tell you that right now. So what is the point? Did they not want it to be a long level grind? Because at that case, you could just start Beastmaster at level 30 or 50. there's really no solid reason to not cap Beastmaster out at level 90 day 1. All I can think of is that they did not want to go through the expansions to plan out the Beast Hunt log that far, and quite frankly, that is just pure laziness. Especially considering Blue won't be getting a patch until next expansion because they've been working on Beastmaster. I like Beastmaster. It looks like solid fun for a few hours. But two things can be true. It is both interesting and new, and also a complete waste of resources. Not because mid-core side content shouldn't exist, because it should. In fact, it's needed for any game to stay healthy long term. But because limited jobs as a whole are far too limited when it comes to the content they are provided. They don't need to be streamlined and allowed in standard content, but they also can't be ignored and need their own brand of late game to delve into. But what do you think? Are limited jobs really just a waste of everyone's time that could be spent elsewhere? Maybe there's things I've completely overlooked. I'm not exactly the most experienced Blue Mage out there. I haven't even finished the Carnival and play it off and on rather casually. Though I am still peeved there's no Blue Mage patch this expansion. Let me know in the comments, and as usual, like and subscribe for more MMO ramblings. The support is always appreciated. Thank you all for watching. Until next time.